Hey everyone, cheers. Welcome to my channel. A little hot tea. We had a rough ice storm last night here in the Northeast. Basically hail, ice, and then snow on top. So you cannot shovel this snowfall with a normal snow shovel. You have to cut it with a shovel you would use to do stone or dirt work or that type of steel shovel. So you cut through it. So I've been doing that, so having a little tea. And I've been planning on this video for a while. And this is about the album covers from the great godfather of fantasy art, Frank Frazetta. Now, Frank was born in Brooklyn on February 9th, 1928. He died May 10th, 2010 at 82 or so, 82, 83. So anyway, I started looking into his artwork years ago. I was a big fan of his artwork for comics, for magazines like, I think, Fantastic Monsters. He did Vampirella. He's famous for that painting. His original artwork goes for the hundreds of thousands or millions. A lot of celebrities buy his artwork. There's a museum in Pennsylvania that showcase his original paintings that his family now run. But he was prolific. He was a child prodigy. He said he could paint whatever came to his head, and his concepts were stylistically extraordinary. He was the one who did the concept for Conan the Barbarian, and in that movie, Conan the Barbarian, the producers and the writers actually went with a lot of his paintings of Conan the Barbarian for their storyboarding. So a lot of those scenes in that movie, the first one with Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think there was another one, but the first one was the best one with James Earl Jones. And anyway, they would take his photos, take his paintings, and use that as the concept. But then later on, he got into so many things. He actually, this is interesting, he actually in life had a stroke that left his right side like semi-paralyzed. So he learned to write and draw with his left hand. He was almost as efficient and prolific with his left hand that he was with his right hand, completely ambidextrous. But it was tough for him to get started. He was a prodigy. He had a scholarship to an art school in, I believe, New York City. He was from Brooklyn. He was a good baseball player. Could have probably been drafted had he not chose art. They said he was a good baseball player. And like I said, I was always a fan of his artwork and did not know that he did album covers. And if you hang on a minute, after I do this brief description, intro to Frank, I'll show some of his albums that I have. He only did a handful of album covers. He also did a handful of movie posters, such as What's New Pussycat, 1964, I believe, The Gauntlet. He did a bunch of paintings for Clint Eastwood films. And you could look all this up, so I'm not going to go through the poster art, but I'm going to talk about the album covers, because his artwork sold magazines, his artwork sold comics, his artwork sold pulp fiction of fantasy books. They said that his fans would go through these newsstands and pharmacies that sold these paperbacks, and they would buy the paperbacks just for his artwork. So he was in demand. But early on, he wasn't in demand, and he was struggling. He happened to get some work with Man Magazine. They were doing a spoof on the Beatles, and he drew Ringo Starr. And I'll show you a Ringo Starr picture that he drew that was unlike his fantasy artwork. His fantasy artwork was very aggressive, very masculine, and his female artwork is very erotic, very sought after. His description of the female body and the male body was totally, erotica. And his records don't reflect that, but some of his artwork reflect the male aspect of that on album covers, and I'm going to show you. So in '64 or so, his painting of Ringo for Man magazine. I don't know if it was an ad or an article on the Beatles. That was Beatlemania, you know, '64. Caught the eye of UA Studios, and they hired him to do some post art. Like I said, What's New Pussycat. Then later on, he branched with UA. He branched over to album covers, and I'm going to show you the handful of album covers that I have. I believe I'm missing a couple. The last one I believe he did was for a great band. I think they might be Australian, Wolfmother. Wolfmother was a great band, maybe been around 20 years now. For me, that's new. I did have the CD, but I looked and can't find it. I believe it was Wolfmother's debut album cover. He did the painting for that, and I remember the painting. You can look it up. Cheers. So without further ado, let me get down to it. And Frank's also known as the godfather of fantasy art. He started it all. You'll see a lot of imitations of his artwork. Once you know his artwork, you'll start to see the imitations, and that's flattery to the utmost, right? His paintings, like I said, sell in the millions. So I'm going to show some of the artwork that I have, artwork on album covers, and you know, we have so many album covers that the artwork sells the album. You know, then you have the non-artwork, which is artwork at avant-garde, like, you know, Metallica's Black Album, the Beatles' White Album, you know, just nothing on there. But that's the Beatles and that's Metallica. But in the old days and now, you know, artwork does sell records. It's the first thing you see. If the record is devoid of the band's name, usually the company will stick a banner or a hype sticker over that. Like the Cars, Candy O did not say the Cars on it, so they put a hype sticker on top of that, you know, on top of the shrink wrap, so that you would know it's the Cars. So I'm going to go over the records that I do have by him. This is a great one. And then I'll show you the poster that I have in a magazine. But it's both sides of Herman's Hermits. You can see the artwork is typical of that era, like the 60s and things. And I'll show you some similar artwork that looks like his work. So I don't know if Frank copied that artwork to do the movie posters and album covers of Herman's Hermits, or vice versa. But you know, that's not neither here nor there. But there you can see it, and on the back, he has a whole menagerie of artists with the Herman's Hermits on stage, and there you can see the Beatles, and you can see Ringo, and you can see the Beatles, and there is some, I think that's the Chinese president at the time, or there's LBJ, there is Fidel Castro. I'm not sure who some of these people are, but you could, Khrushchev, I know Castro's in here, right there, you could see him. And this was a controversial album cover for whatever reason. This was at the height of the Cold War, and I think that's, that might be Harry Truman, but that's his artwork, and that's similar to the artwork that got him the movie contracts for movie posters, because I'm thinking that rendition of Ringo was what sold it. Just for, since I have the album out, here's the inner. By the way, this is a pretty cool album on MGM. MGM records really sound good for the most part, although I'm not happy with the soundtrack Mutiny on the Bounty. That artwork is has nothing to do with this, but the album MGM, I didn't like the sound to that. I talked about that in a video. Here is the reel-to-reel of this Herman's Hermits, both sides of Herman's Hermits. You can see that. That's Frank FRAZETTA, the godfather of fantasy art, and he sold a lot of books, he sold a lot of movies, and he sold a lot of records just with his artwork. Here is one that you may not know about, Roy Orbison, and this is also probably originally MGM. I have it on MCA. This is a repress, but there's the artwork here, and you could see it's kind of that whimsical 60s or 70s type of artwork. And this is the fastest guitar alive. The record's not bad. I picked it up just so I could show this on this feature, so I waited for this. I bought this on eBay, and I didn't realize that this was the repress. I could have gotten the original. The original has a nice description of the film on the back, so this repress does not have it, but this is a great Frank FRAZETTA artwork, and you can see again cartoonish, very different from his fantasy artwork, which I'll show in a minute. So when he worked on when he worked for the great band Molly Hatchet, he did 2 album covers for them. The 78 debut, which is called, the painting is called Death Dealer, and that's a famous painting. I believe that original artwork sold for millions. I can't find that record. I do have it somewhere, but I do have their 79 record, Flirting with Disaster, and you could see Molly Hatchet, named after a prostitute who allegedly would mutilate and decapitate her victims with a hatchet. That's the name, Molly Hatchet. And you could see that masculine, just incredible articulation and detail. And you know, here's the back, no artwork on the back. But this is a Frank FRAZETTA. He did 2 for Molly Hatchet. By the way, I did a short on this, so that's online. I picked this record up at the Eastern Record Exchange in Pennsylvania. Great job. Tom is working there. It used to be Nick. So Flirting with Disaster, Frank FRAZETTA. And he only did about 5 or 6, I believe, album covers for some reason. Here's a really great one. Nazareth, Expect No Mercy. This is and you can see that it's just it just moves. It's amazing, the concept, and this concept is all his. I'm sure Nazareth told him the title, maybe said what they were looking for, and he was able to do that. Front cover painting by Frank FRAZETTA. That's, if you don't know how to spell it, FRAZETTA. And he has a museum in Pennsylvania where he lived. He opened up a studio museum that's still there, a gallery. His children run that. He's just a child prodigy. You know, just a fascinating story where, you know, like I said, started to struggle, got some work with UA, and that led to these album covers, I believe. And then he went on to just doing fantasy work like Conan the Barbarian and so many others. I'm not an expert on Frank, but I love his artwork. Vampirella from Famous Monsters, I believe, again. Comic books, Man Magazine, so many more. Here's that great one again. Here's another one I have of these. By the way, it's a great album. It's cheap. You could probably pick one up on eBay for a few bucks. Let me see here. Oh yeah, he had a stroke that left his right side semi-paralyzed. Couldn't really write and draw, so he learned how to do that with his left hand. So that's pretty amazing. Now some of the artwork that maybe mirrored his artwork, I'll show you. It's you know, this is an album that is a movie that I love. It's A Man, Man, Mad World. You can see the similarities to that and the fastest guitar in the West, that Roy Orbison. So you can see that similarities there. Here's just another regular Molly Hatchet, which is a pretty good live album if you're a Molly Hatchet fan. And I'll show you some of the artwork that he did for movie posters, which I thought I had What's New Pussycat, but I couldn't locate it, obviously. But here you can see What's New Pussycat from this great book, What's New Pussycat, there. And there's some similar artwork And that similar artwork is by Jack Davis. So Jack Davis did the cover for It's a Man, Man, Mad World, and these other albums covers here. So you can see the similarity, and that's what they were looking for in the mid to late 60s, early 70s. So once again, just like an unbelievable talent. He is renowned as the godfather of fantasy art. His legacy is that people today still admire his artwork and still copy his artwork and make it their own. So if you see a Conan the Barbarian or stuff he did for cartoons, I believe he did Fire and Ice, he did The Gauntlet, What's New Pussycat, the Fearless Vampire Killers was one of his movie posters. Let me see here. An interesting fact was that his paintings now are in most celebrities' homes. It's not. It's almost beyond the purse book, the pocketbooks of the average person. But I'm sure back in the day, he was probably selling his artwork for a few $1,000s just to pay the rent, just to make ends meet. But he knew he had a special skill. He said that he could draw whatever he was in his head. He didn't use models for the most part. He didn't use props for the most part. So he was a true miracle, a true artist, a genius. So just wanted to check him out. Here's a few of his. I didn't have the Wolf Mother. I didn't have the other Molly Hatchet, which is called the first self-titled Death Dealer. That's the cover. That art sold for millions. So there you have it, Frank Frazetta. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate you stopping in. And if you can, please sub and please like. And enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.